Hey guys, welcome back to the Power Play here on WDSR Student Radio at Duquesne University. Again, make sure you are following us on Twitter. We are at the Power Play 14. And to continue with our playoffs discussion, we're going to move ahead and start talking about the Dallas, and I don't know why it's slipping my mind right now who they're playing. I'm having a
Anaheim.
Anaheim. Sorry, I just had a total brain for a moment. I only made it halfway through my coffee before I started talking about that. Which Stacey just stole from me. But anyway, so keep going with the Western Conference playoff series. The Stars actually really surprised me in this series as well. It's
been a tale of two game series almost. Sort of the first two games, if you watch, Dallas looked like scared almost against Anaheim. Anaheim was just controlling offensively, getting lots of shots on, hitting the boards. And then in the last two games, Dallas has played out of their skin at home. I know they were facing a 2-0 deficit, and they've really worked hard at the things which they lacked in games 1 and 2. Obviously, game 5 is tonight at 10:30, as we talked about earlier. But this is the biggest game. I feel like if Dallas could win one away, they could shock Anaheim. They could shock the Western Conference. I saw one person pick Dallas when I was reading a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, that's an interesting pick to pick Dallas in this series. But he might be correct.
I think it's going to be especially interesting for the Stars, considering Duck center Ryan Getzlaf, his status is up in the air right now. I really don't think he's going to be playing Game 5.
Yeah, he took a really nasty hit to the face early in the series, but, I admire him for trying as hard as he can to come back still in this series. That was a nasty, nasty hit.
Came back with almost the Sidney Crosby sort of face mask, like on the lower half.
Yeah, I did notice that.
But that was a nasty hit. I didn't expect him back. I thought he might have been out a couple of games, but he obviously made it back the other night. You don't feel scared watching hockey sort of as a fan, but when you see someone get hit in the face by a slap shot like that, you feel concerned.
But I think the fact that he put the face mask on and he came back and he's still playing, I really think that's gonna do wonders for Anaheim and trying to push them forward. It's like, he's a major player for them, and to see him, say like, I'm still coming back and I'm still going to fight and I'm going to, really help this team out as much as I can, that's got to give Anaheim a little bit more of a push, especially since, like we said, Dallas is really starting to surprise everyone. And, when you're Dallas and, and you see that, maybe that is going to be the push that they need, that it's like, okay, Anaheim's going to come out fighting, so we need to come out fighting. And they do have the advantage of being the underdog to really come back and just shock everyone.
Bruce Boudreau did not say whether he would start goalie Frederik Andersen or Jonas Hiller. Andersen was pulled in the third period of the fourth game, and Hiller was given his first 10 minutes and around 34 seconds on the ice this postseason.
They're both very good goaltenders, though, too. So, again, goaltending has been the name of the game, I feel like, this season, especially now that the playoffs have started. But, going back, I picked the Ducks to win this series, but as of right now, I kind of want to say it could go either way.
And Timu might be back tonight. He was a healthy scratch in Game 4. Will he be back tonight? You'd expect. I don't know what happened the other day for him to be a healthy scratch, but hopefully it doesn't sound promising. It sounds like a discipline issue off the ice, but we won't go into too much thinking about what that could have been. But I feel like Anaheim at home, they've won 31 of 43 games this season at home, which is about a 75%. 3 out of 4 games they win at home. So I'd expect them to win Game 5 tonight at home and then really put the pressure on Dallas in Game 6.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, they're a very good team when they play in their own house. And having that advantage, I guess, now in the playoffs is going to be huge for them. But they've been another team that's been solid pretty much all year. And again, that's the reason why I picked them to come out of the series. But, I got to say, it's kind of fun watching Dallas battle back the way that they have. That really creates for an exciting first round series.
The Ducks are just so good at home. They've won 31 of 43 games at home this season, but they're still just unsure if their captain's going to start and who's going to start in goal. And this suddenly tied first round series.
Yeah, I think if regardless of who starts in goal, both goaltenders are very good. But I don't know. It could hurt them, I guess, if Teemu Selin does not come back tonight, just because he is such a strong asset. He's quick on the ice. He's a big goal scorer for them. So I don't know. I say if he doesn't come back and Dallas capitalizes on that, it's really going to make the series a whole lot more interesting than it already is.
I agree. I feel like Dallas right now might have the momentum, but if you look at the first two games, Anaheim had the momentum after the first two games and got shut out in Dallas. It'll be interesting to see when it's a best of three series, whether that changes the mindset of these two teams. I feel like Anaheim will have the advantage at home, even if Getzlaf does not play tonight. I just feel like they've been so dominant at home. They'll figure out who to start in net, and just having that home crowd, I said this the other day when I was at the Pens game. It's almost like a gladiator atmosphere. You feel like you're at the Coliseum when you're a fan, and when you're a player of that home team. It's amazing. But when you're away, it doesn't scare you because these guys are used to playing away. But it has to be very intimidating for these Dallas players to play away in Anaheim, and I expect Anaheim to just continue this home streak.
Especially if Dallas knows how strong Anaheim is at home, and I'm sure they do at this point. That has to be something that they factor into their game when they look at strategy for how they're going to approach it. And that is there's a lot of off-ice factors as well as on-ice factors that you have to take into consideration when you're developing your game strategy. And as much as athletes are supposed to be able to block out everything else outside of the game, when you have a home crowd as, passionate and intense, and like you said, with a Coliseum,
have you heard some of these crowds? It's crazy.
Yeah, and Anaheim has probably some of the most passionate fans, not just in the Western Conference, but, in the entire league. I've always seen them or known them to be one of the strongest fan bases. I definitely think they're the strongest in California.
Interesting fact of the series is that Jonas Hiller has a 1,000 save percentage due to the fact that he's only faced one shot. So,
well, that will help.
That might help for tonight's game. He's carrying some confidence from that one shot. But you'd expect him to go back to their regular goaltender. I know Hiller didn't start since April 4th, which was about a 2.5 week absence. As we've seen in Pittsburgh and as we've seen around the league, sort of when Fleury has a bad game and he gets pulled, usually you see him back in there. There's just a big difference between just the starting goaltender who you play for most of the year and then his backup. You have to have faith in both of them, but I feel like they'll go back to their regular starter tonight. Yeah,
I do too. There's always going to be your people that are going to say that, oh, they choked, like it's time to bring in the backup goalie. But goaltenders, like every other player in the game and every other athlete in every other sport, you're going to have bad games and you're going to have bad spurts. They call it a slump for a reason. And sometimes it just takes that faith from the fans and the coaching staff and your other players to get you out of that and get you back into the game that you know how to play and the game that you're good at. So, yeah, I fully expect to see the regular starting goaltender in net.
I hope Anderson's listening and is getting some confidence out of that.
Yeah.
If he has our faith, then he has the coach's faith.
The power play has got you. Oh, my goodness.
And I believe the last game we have to talk about in the West is another series that's tied 2-2. The Blues and Chicago.
What an uneventful series that has been. That's been... Out of all the playoff series we've seen this offseason, this is the one which is most interesting to me. I've watched all 4 games. I was there when I saw that hit on the Bacchus hit.
You were there?
I wasn't there personally. Oh. I felt like I was there. So I was watching on TV.
We have a well-traveled reporter here for us.
Yeah, sort of traveling to my living room. But these are two teams that had different ends of the season. St. Louis finished 0-6 in the last 6 games. They look like they're going to be out in 4. But first 2 games, St. Louis controlled, and then the last 2 games, Chicago's just... It's amazing how these series just split into 2 different worlds almost.
This series has been the poster child for overtime hockey, though. I mean, would it go to three overtime?
Triple overtime.
Triple overtime in the first game, went to overtime the second game.
They gotta be tired.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the total number of periods that they have played, they've pretty much played an entire series so far, you know, as far as how much time that each team has spent on the ice. And, yeah, I think overtime hockey in the playoffs is always, I think, more exciting to watch. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a good shootout in the regular season. That's probably my favorite aspect of the game. But there's something about the sudden death overtime in the playoffs, because you're not just going for 5 minutes, you're going for the entire 20 minutes, and if you still don't score it, you're going to keep going. And
again,
yeah, I mean, Chris, I gotta agree with you. This has been the most exciting one to watch, I think, of the entire playoff series, both Western and Eastern. Just because of that, you know, I think it's because it's so unpredictable. You don't know if they're going to finish in regulation or they're going to have to go to overtime again.
And two of the top 5 goaltenders, I would say, in Crawford and Miller right now.
How do you think Miller feels actually getting to be in the playoffs this
I know
year?
he probably does. They probably just told him it's the regular season, just keep playing, because he probably doesn't know what it feels like. It's like, why are we having another overtime? I thought, where's the shootout?
Oh, no.
Man.
He's probably glad that it's not snowing, though, in the middle of April, like I'm sure
that's
true.
True.
It has been in Buffalo.
No, I really think this has been very good for Ryan Miller. And, you know, for St. Louis to come out and win those first 2 games in that sudden death situation, that's got to be such a confidence builder on his end, especially coming from Buffalo, you know, where he didn't really have much of a defense in front of him. And St. Louis has really held their own. And this was the one series that I had a really hard time picking who was going to take this one, just because Chicago is such a strong team. They have such depth on the offense, the defense. Crawford is an excellent goalie, and but St. Louis has been strong all year too, and they've really been rebuilding their program to get to this point over the past few years. So they've done everything right as far as taking the steps to get towards the playoffs.
Right now, you could argue that both teams could be up 3-1 in this series with the 3 overtime games. And even in that 2-0 Chicago win, which they had over St. Louis dominated that game. If you watched it and didn't see the score, you would have thought that St. Louis was dominating. However, you have to take your shots, and both teams have done this in overtime, and it's going to be tough. St. Louis hasn't lost against Chicago at home. That's an interesting factor, going back to the home advantage. But Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, all the stars are starting to fire on their cylinders in this series. I feel like we're in for at least 2 more overtime games in this series.
I agree.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you guys right there. We're going to go ahead and take our second break, because we have to be mindful about putting everything up on YouTube. I'm not a partner, so it gets kind of difficult for me anymore. Student problems.
We like to talk here at the Power Play.
Stop paying, Daisy. It'll be worth it.
If you guys aren't following us, you should be following along with this show on Twitter at the Power Play 14. We have a lot more exciting topics to talk about, finishing up the West here, and then moving on to the Eastern Conference and what's going on over on this coast in the playoffs. We are Katie, Daisy, and Chris, and we will be right back.